For more on Amazon's fourth quarter, let's get a Citizens JMP equity research analyst, Nick Jones. Nick, what's your impression of this quarter, and particularly that AWS miss now following on the heels of its peers?
Yeah, I think there's some investors were holding out hope that maybe Amazon was gaining more share than some of the competitors. But in a lot of the conversations I had leading up to the quarter, I think there was a fair amount of folks who were expecting the growth to not be as strong given what Microsoft reported and what Google reported. I also really think that the stock reaction is likely more driven on the operating income guidance, more so than the AWS growth number. That's kind of how the narrative has been shifting over the last several quarters. So I think looking into the quarter, into the guidance, what some folks may be missing is we are lapping a leap year, right? So there's one less day this year versus last year. Last year, Easter was also in 1Q. This year, it's going to be in 2Q. So there's some moving pieces that could actually influence some of the retail business, the number of days in the quarter to generate revenue, that we'll look for some more clarity on the call.
Yeah, and Nick, on your point about operating income, so Q1 operating income, they're guiding for between 14 to 18 billion. The street was closer to 18.24 billion. Any ideas then, obviously on the call, Nick, that'll be a focus, but any ideas, some of the puts and takes that might have been at play there?
Yeah, I mean, look, FX has been a focus for a lot of folks, kind of heading into the quarter, into the guidance. They've recently had to start monitoring products for recalls. That likely increased costs a little bit. They potentially are rejiggering their logistics as they pull back a little bit from UPS, which we heard a little bit earlier this week, last week. So I think there's a lot of kind of moving pieces here that we're going to need more color on for operating income inputs.
What's your number one question on the call for the company?
The number one question, I think, is cloud demand and how much demand is there for AI, right? We saw kind of the impact from DeepSeek over the last week. There's a lot of focus on, is this going to be a lot cheaper than we originally thought or not? Most of the tech majors are saying we still need to spend a lot of money in CapEx to build for future demand. I think that's kind of the key focus. And then operating income. I think this is a operating income story now, more so than AWS growth. I think folks know cloud migrations are going to go on for many, many years. AI is going to be around for a long time. We're in extremely early days. So I think really understanding the cost structure and some of the puts and takes on the 1Q guide, as I alluded to before, FX, leap year, lapping a leap year, a shift in Easter by 3 weeks from 1Q to 2Q. Things like that I think are going to be the focus.
Nick, how much do you want them to spend this year, right? I think they said they were spending $75 billion last year in CapEx. We know what their competitors are spending. What's a good number, or is it just kind of the higher the better?
Yeah, so we're above consensus. We're at 90 billion in CapEx for 25. I think that might even be conservative. I think higher the better. We're in very, very early days for AI, and there's going to be a lot of compute. There's going to be a lot of distillation. No one really knows what to do with this stuff yet in terms of a consumer-facing product or even an enterprise-facing product to scale. So I think more the better. If you underspend now, you risk losing share later.
Nick, you mentioned DeepSeek, that cheaper open source model. How do you think about what that means for Amazon's business, potentially looking ahead?
I think it's probably encouraging, right? We got to see a Chinese company essentially distill other available models down to something that's a lot more efficient. I think that's probably going to trigger a lot of spend for many of their customers saying, wait a second, we can distill this and get the compute down to something that's affordable. So I think net, this is a positive for Amazon and the entire AI space.
Nick Jones, thank you so much today for joining the show. Appreciate it.